There are some features in Final Cut Pro that I love, and therefore I never switched to Davinci Resolve because I didn't want to lose them. But now I forced myself to work 1 week with Davinci Resolve to find out if my beloved features work there as well, or even better. Final Cut's key feature is of course the magnetic timeline. You can cut through your footage very quickly, delete parts and everything rearranges so you get no gaps. You can drag clips around and the attached B-roll and sound effects move with it. And you can very easily insert it on another place in the timeline without overwriting what was there. So everything moves around while you're editing. So how about Resolve? Well, it has something very similar, which is the cut page. You can trim clips and the following ones are automatically repositioned to the new end, like in Final Cut. You can drag clips around, and for easy projects, this might even be the only page you need. But even in the advanced edit page, you can edit very quickly. With some shortcuts, you can ripple trim your clips, and you can edit through them like butter. But it's not fully magnetic, and you have to manually delete the created gaps, but I can do this very quickly with one shortcut. And as much as I liked Final Cut's magnetic timeline for simple projects, it became quite cumbersome when you're working on complex projects, because everything is linked to the main storyline. You cannot link sound effects down here to your B-roll up there. It sticks to the main storyline, which doesn't have anything to do with these sound effects. And you have to move them separately when your B-roll moves. You have to select it with your B-roll and then you can move this group. But if you forget, they stay in place and don't move with the B-roll. And of course it's the same with titles. In Final Cut you cannot link titles to the B-roll they belong to. In Davinci Resolve you can of course do that. You can link any element to any other, which makes things much easier in my opinion. You see these chain symbols here? Now you can move everything together. We will come to other benefits in the Resolve timeline later in this video. The next topic is simplicity. I always found Final Cut is very simple. But to be honest, Resolve is not that different. We have a page where we manage our media. We have a page where we cut, the editing page. And then we have an area for color grading. If we compare that to Final Cut, I have to say I worked like this in Final Cut as well. I had one workspace where I managed my media, where I have enough space for all my clips. Then one workspace for editing, and another one for color grading, where I really hide all the editing things I don't need and have place for my color grading tools. The next thing I loved about Final Cut was that it saves automatically. Every single change, every single cut is automatically saved. That's a huge thing for me, that I don't lose hours of work just because I forgot to save. But thankfully Resolve has just the same functionality. You just have to activate it here in the user preferences. Then I liked the Ken Burns effect very much. I used it all the time to make static shots more interesting or to create vertigo effects in moving shots and so on. Well, Davinci has exactly the same feature and it works without keyframing as well. Just activate the built-in dynamic zoom effect, adjust the end screen setting exactly the same as in Final Cut. Then I was a bit concerned if Davinci Resolve would be just as quick as Final Cut. So I made a video exactly 1 minute long and exported it. Resolve took 47 seconds and Final Cut took, guess what, exactly 47 seconds. So no worries here. I have about 2,000 euros of plugins in Final Cut Pro. 3D trackers, titles, lens flares, noise reduction, color grading add-ons. And I was a bit worried that I would have to buy them in Resolve as well. But actually most of the stuff works in Resolve out of the box. Look at this example of noise reduction. So easy, much better quality than in Final Cut and already integrated into the system. Or here, I built a quick 3D tracker without any issues. It creates a point cloud, you tell him where to put the object and you're done. In Final Cut you cannot create titles directly, but you can do this in Apple Motion and import it in Final Cut, which is quite convenient. You can adjust the main parameters, like text and color and whatever you publish in Apple Motion, so let's write in these are fake mountains. But you cannot adjust the basic animations, how the effect is built or the title is built. For my purpose, this effect builds up too quickly. I want this to come in slower. And I have to open Apple Motion for this. In there I drag my keyframe to the right to make the animation run slower. Check again if it's okay now. It is, and then I save and come back to Final Cut. And as you see, nothing has changed. I have to re-import the newly saved title, make it a bit shorter, delete the old one, and as you see, the text now is first row, second row, so I have to change all the parameters again. In Resolve it's different. You don't need another program to edit your titles. You can open it in the integrated Fairlight page and you immediately see how the effect or the title is built, and you can change every single item in there. Now let's make this line a bit bigger so that it's really ugly. And then you can see in the timeline, it is already changed in here. No saving, re-importing, whatever. Which brings us to a list of things that I and everybody else thinks that are better in Resolve than in Final Cut Pro. And the first topic must be color grading, because there is a reason why Davinci Resolve is the industry standard for color grading. Let's have a look at Final Cut though. You can grade most of your stuff in Final Cut. I did that for the last 3 years. But the workflow in there is very simple. You have some layers and you can stack your effects in there. Let's add a conversion LUT from log to rec 709. Then let's add some color wheels and make some adjustments here. Then let's close this again, open up another one, make the sky a bit more blue. And we've even added a mask here because everything would be blue and we just want to isolate the sky. So far so good. Let's do the same in Resolve. As you see, we have this node structure here and not layer structure. Let's open up our scopes. And we really make a basic grade here. Some lift gamma gain adjustments. We can rename the node so that we know what we're doing in here. Let's make the next adjustments in the next node. And open up our color curves. And what's already very different to Final Cut is you see which colors are used in your image. So here we have a peak in the blue. We know a lot of blue is in the image. And we have to exactly adjust this segment if we want to change our sky. Let's mask this a bit like we did in Final Cut, so that the mountains are not so bluish, only the sky. And what's cool is you see in this miniature view of the nodes what you changed in this node, so that we are only affecting the upper parts of the node due to our mask. And since this is a moving shot, we want to track our color grading, our mask, with the movement of the camera. Just click this button, it automatically tracks everything to the movement. Quite cool. Here we just use the same controls as in Final Cut, but Resolve has so many more options like log wheels where you can address smaller areas of your image you want to change, or this color warper here that changes hue and saturation in one control. You would need multiple adjustments in Final Cut for that, with a hue versus hue curve and the hue versus saturation curve and so on. The next topic where Resolve shines are masks, and they are kind of related to color grading. Let's get to Final Cut and try to isolate my face. I use a color mask and a color picker, and this is as good as I can get. There are not a lot of options for refinement here. Well, let's try a different mask, not a 3D mask, but an HSL mask. In here you can make better masks, but again you are very limited when it comes to mask refinement or something like that. Let's do the same in Resolve, and as you can see we have a lot more options to select in the image what we want. The sliders are much bigger, we have numeric fields where we can exactly type in the value we need, and it's not so fiddly as in Final Cut. Then again we put on a mask and track it with the movement, and we only have isolated the face and not the jacket, which is skin reddish as well. And now I show you the best feature in Resolve, the magic mask. You just draw around what you want to mask and then track it, and the AI in the software automatically recognizes how this object moves. You cannot imagine how much time I spent with rotoscoping in the past. I'm freaking out, and now it's done automatically. So cool. Next we have a look at the timeline. Final Cut has one main storyline, and it arranges every additional element above or below. It simply stacks the footage and effects depending on how much you use at the same place. So it can get very messy when you have different amount of effects in different places. Titles are at different height levels. It's not easy to deactivate all of them with one click. It's not possible in a convenient way just to listen to your added sound effects and deactivate all music and dialogue. You would have to assign roles first to each element, which is more time consuming. Davinci puts everything in tracks and is organized that way, which is basically a storyline in Final Cut for everything. You can put your titles in one track and you're able to easily switch them on or off. Same with B-roll and other elements you put on top of your main track. And you can link every element to any other, so your effects for your B-roll should be linked to your B-roll and should move with it. I've mentioned that before, and it's simply not possible in Final Cut. We are almost done, my friends. The last point now is audio. And it's really an important one, because here you can see the strange arrangement in Final Cut of voiceover files in my project. One is at the top, one is at the bottom. Even if I assign roles, it doesn't put it in one line correctly. I do not want to make a compound clip out of these, because I want to keep the single audio slices to move them around. So let's put on an equalizer. We make our adjustments, and the equalizer is now only on the first clip. We have to copy it then to all the other. Then we have to copy it to all the other voiceover files. Now if we make an adjustment in the first clip, we want to change the equalizer slightly, we have to remove this copied effect from all other files and copy it over again. And this for every single change you do. There is no way to do this for all the files together, except making a compound clip, which I don't want. And again, Davinci has a better way to do this. You can of course add effects to single slices of your voiceover while you're editing in the edit page. But in the Fairlight page, which is a dedicated page only for audio, you can assign effects to tracks. And since the track contains all your voiceover files, the effect affects every voiceover file as well. No need to delete and copy paste the whole time. So I exactly know how the comment sections of videos like this look like. Let's be nice to each other. I did not insult your mom. It's only software. So let's not fight what is the best tool for everybody, because everybody has different needs. But I made the decision to switch to Resolve and I give it a try. And if you want to learn something about editing in general, you can watch this video here where I give you 10 important tips about editing.